Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Charlie Mike, hosted by me, Mike Buchanan. So on this episode, this is going to be a special one. You ready for this? My boss is here, and I'm going to be interviewing him because, honestly, he's a really good figure to talk about the topic that we're going to be talking about today, which is veterans kind of telling their own stories and why is that important. And so, honestly, he's kind of the one that even gave us the opportunity to be able to do this show. And this is really a bunch of veterans or other people who are helping veterans tell their stories and how they're helping veterans and why are they helping veterans. Because I think that that's sometimes even more important is that if we learn the reasons behind why people are helping us as veterans, not just that they're helping us as veterans, right? So anyways, let's all say, hey, this is Jeff Clapper. He is the Chief of Public Affairs for the VA North Texas, so the one that I work for. And he's also the executive producer of the show. And I'm super freaking nervous because he's my boss. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Jeff, you want to say hi?
Hello. It's good to be here. No, Mike, you're doing a really good job with the show.
Thanks.
I know that when we wanted to set up this podcast about a year and a half ago, I knew that you would be the best person for this show with the best personality.
Ooh, so, I just want you to know that's on camera. He just admitted that I was good on something, good at something on camera. Woo! All right, I'm gonna send that clip to my mom. Just FYI. So I just
hello, Mike's mom. Your son's doing a fantastic job.
See, I can be something. I'm just kidding. I have mommy issues, but regardless of that, so why don't you just start by this? Why don't we just talk a little bit about who you are, Jeff Clapper? Just who is Jeff Clapper?
I don't know. Who am I? I mean, that's a very defunct big question for Garland, Texas in the morning. No, who I am, I'm a proud vet. I'm a proud vet of VA North Texas. I get all my health care here. I served in the Air Force for 20 years.
Boo.
What I like to tell...
Kidding.
But I will tell you, my biggest customer in the Air Force, especially after 9/11, was the United States Army. I mean, most of my deployments were being embedded with different joint task force, a lot of them led by the Army. So, but again, I had a really good run in the U.S. Air Force. Like I like to tell people, I saw the best and worst of humanity. I was a photojournalist, a broadcaster, and as I climbed the ranks, you move into leadership roles. I was a first sergeant for a while, and again, I got to be around a bunch of really cool people, talented people, selfless people, and my role here at the VA is kind of an extension of that, because my entire team are disabled vets. A lot of them are combat vets of Iraq and Afghanistan, and I've surrounded myself with people that I met throughout my entire career. So who I am, I'm just a vet. I'm just someone who cares about veterans' health care, and I'm here at VA to help veterans tell their stories, share their stories, and if I can make a little bit of a difference, or if my team can make a difference, that's really ultimately why I'm here and why I'm getting paid to do this.
Well said. One of these days I'm going to be able to talk like him on camera, but not really, because I'm way more lame in terms. He's way more put together. No, well said. You absolutely do, I think, allow us to have an opportunity to be able to tell the stories of the veterans. I think it's really important. And I can tell you from like my perspective as a disabled veteran, obviously I work for you. We're all disabled veterans that work for him. But when in my like mental health journey, it was really important with stories, right? Stories were extremely important. That's kind of where I got like the most help, is when I was doing group therapies, to where like you sit around and you're listening to all these stories and you're like, oh God, not another story. But at the same time, when that one story that you listen to really kind of like resonates with you on the inside, right?
Yeah.
Not just, in your head, but just like really in your heart, right? Yeah. And you're like, that's me, right? Like that is me right there. That guy sitting across this room right here, that's just another copy of exactly what my life and what I'm experiencing, what I'm going through. And if he can do it, well, then probably I can do it, right? And so like that's the only thing that kept me 6 feet over, like really, like honestly. Right. Is being able to hear those other stories and being able to not commiserate, right? Not stay stuck or feel bad about myself or my situation, or feel bad for them about their situation, because I don't do sympathy. But to really have that empathy, right? That really like, I get what you're going through. I really feel it and I really understand it. So yeah, stories I feel like are so important, right? So important. And I don't think that we do enough of it, honestly. Or we tell, or organizations tell the ones that just make them money. Like, let's just be honest, right? Sure. I mean, it happens a lot. Right? You're going to have some double amputee and they're going to put pictures of his missing legs up there all the time because it makes them more money. That sucks, but it is what it is, right? Yeah. It actually happens. So, let's talk about, oh, by the way, Cammie is going to love you because you're the first one that's ever said that this podcast is actually recorded here in Garland at the Garland location. She's going to love you for that. She's trying to get me to say that for like the entire time that we've done this.
Well, it's, as we sit here today, it's been 2 years since, Baylor Scott and White donated this hospital to us. And it takes forever to get stuff done when it comes to the government. And it would have taken us 10 or more years to acquire the ability to service these vets and make it more convenient.
Sure.
And again, there's over 50,000 vets who could be receiving care in this area. And we're seeing, I think we saw about 55,000 of them in the last year and a half. So again, I love this facility. It's growing, it's building. But yeah, if I can keep Cammie happy and get the vets who are live in this area just to use it, hey.
Yeah, that's our goal. Keep Cammie happy. Did you hear that? Yeah, I said it in the camera too. Keep Cammie happy. All right. So let's talk about this. Why do you feel like? I mean, I just told you why I feel like stories are really important, but let's just talk about public affairs, because I don't think that, honestly, we talked about this offline a little bit this morning, but I just really don't feel like some people really understand what public affairs is all about or why it's even important, right? And especially in the VA healthcare, kind of, I guess, arena, because I know that people can understand why public relations would be big in a Fortune 500 company, right?
Sure.
But why do you think that public affairs or public relations is so important and such a necessary kind of tool to be used in a healthcare network like the VA?
Well, doing my job in PA here at VA is unique in that typically your large hospital systems, and this hospital system is the second largest in the nation. If you racked and stacked us against our peers in the community, we would be number one or number two. Typically, those type of facilities have divisions and vice presidents with 50 to 100 or more people that are doing your PR, your marketing, social media, all your different things. VA's model is to have a finite group of communicators. And simply put, a lot of what the VA focuses its communication efforts on is being reactive in nature versus being proactive in nature.
Ready, fire, aim, right?
And for a lot of facilities, that works, especially facilities where you may only have one or two people. You can't afford, you don't have the time or resources to properly tell your story. So you're kind of in this reactive mode, waiting for bad stuff to happen, and then you can handle it from there. When I was hired on, I told my boss at the time, I said, I want to tell the VA story through its patients and employees. And that's something that I did when I was in the military for 20 years. Military communications doesn't necessarily have a marketing arm to it as it does a strategic communication point. And strategic communication obviously means, we're going to tell the positive stories. We're not going to tell the negative stories. We all understand that. But a lot of what military communications has done, especially since 9/11 with all the deployments, is truly getting on the ground and telling those individual stories of those soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen. And so coming here to VA, I wanted to create something that would help tell the story of the 2,500 vets a day that walk through the Dallas VA Medical Center campus. I was astounded when I was hired here that there was 2,500 people walking through that building on a daily basis. That's 2,500 different stories. That's 2,500 different opportunities to hear voices that I think we as VA employees and as medical professionals need to hear. That helps us get care to those vets tailored to what they need based on their experiences. So my whole role is still to this day, after 6 years in VA, is I view myself as the chief storyteller, if you will, someone who enables the telling and sharing of those voices, good or bad, about what VA can do or does do, and how your past experiences serving in uniform make you the person you are today and help us develop your healthcare plan going forward.
Yeah, you make a really good point that I want to kind of let's just touch on for a bit, but you said good or bad. And I think that I will tell you this. I will tell you, and I'll tell everybody that's watching, is that you have done a great job at allowing us as your team to, to tell both sides of the story, right? Because I think that transparency is essential, right? Especially in today's society, because all eyes on you everywhere, right? It's kind of like everyone can be under scrutiny because there's 1,000 camera phones nowadays, right? Sure. No matter where you are. And so that you'd rather be transparent and have people understand exactly what's going on so that they can try to empathize with what's going on rather than sit there and formulate their own stories, right? In the military, we always say that we have barracks lawyers, right? Sure, yeah. And so instead of those barracks lawyers allowing to take a piece of the story, a kernel of the truth, right, and then running with it, it allows us to get out in front of it, right, and really be honest with our people that we're working with and all the other community contacts that we have, right, to where we sit there and we go, okay, yeah, we may have not done good on this, but the thing is that now we know we're not doing good, and so now we can do better, and then we're going to continue on doing these things and these things, right. And it's not, this is a blip. Right, this is a blip, and I know it looks like a bad blip, but it's a blip. We're gonna fix it. We're gonna overcome it. This is an opportunity for change, right? And so I think that way it builds more trust and it builds that deeper working relationship with our community that I think I haven't really seen before at other VAs, right? I think because our team is allowed to kind of go out there and just be honest, right? I mean, really be honest with people and just really speak from the heart and really say, I understand, I use services too, And so, yeah, I wanted to hit on that because I think it's important for people to understand that, right?
Right.
Not every VA does that. Not every VA does that. Yeah. Let's just get that straight. So,
and again, a lot of VAs work very, very hard, but because of the amount of people that they have, and especially if you're in a larger competitive market like this, it's really, really hard to get physicians and nurses and clinical professionals. In a market like Dallas-Fort Worth, it's hard to get them to onboard because our salaries can't always keep up with what they can make on the outside. So whenever I talk to people, these type of professionals, my wisdom to them is that, listen, working for VA, working with vets, it's not just a job, it's a career, it's a profession. It's a profession within your profession. And it's not always going to be easy. I mean, VA has so many moving parts, and I know that we just work on the medical side of the house, which I would argue probably has some of the most moving parts so far as dealing with so many patients with a high demand. And the sad reality is that veterans, when compared to their peers, are sicker by 5 or 6 times than our peers' equivalents by age and everything on the outside.
Yeah.
So the VA has a tremendous job that they have to tackle that a lot of this we'll say civilian healthcare systems don't deal with. And so, it's a huge piece of the puzzle that hopefully we can chip away at, and we can, try to solve that.
Well said. All right, so I don't want to go down a rabbit hole because I could literally go down a rabbit hole for hours. You know this. I've talked your ear off for hours, and you were just like, "Let me go home, please, Lord Jesus." So I'm serious. He does that. So does my wife, though. By the way. So let's get into this. Tell me. Let's talk about some of the programs that you've kind of put in place or that you've kind of established here in North Texas that help veterans tell their stories.
Well,
good or bad too. Good or bad.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned earlier, the Dallas VA campus is where I spend most of my time. Most of my team spends their time. We see 2,500 patients a day. And within the first couple months of me working here and walking around and talking to these vets, because what I like to do whenever possible is I like to go to these clinics, these outpatient clinics, and I like to just sit down and I like to just talk to my fellow vets, ask them how their experiences were. And the idea kind of popped into my head is I'm like, how can I take this one-on-ones that I do and turn it into something visual that can be shared and seen by other vets, by non-vets, by their family members. And so I kind of brainstormed a little bit, and frankly, there's a couple other programs throughout DoD that are already like it. I said, we need like a faces. There's so many faces of veterans, faces of employees, faces of VA. So I figured, hey, let's create a portrait and storytelling program like it's showing up on here, where we could tell those stories and show those stories from a visual component with great portraits, which hopefully tell a little bit of the story of each vet. But I also sit down and my team and we interview these vets and get their stories. And again, everyone has a story. Every veteran, every person has a story. A lot of vets that I've talked to during these faces, they feel as if their story's not important or that they don't really have a story. And then we get to talking, and 10 or 15 or 20 minutes later, they realize, wow, now that I've verbalized it and said it out loud, I didn't realize that
maybe I have a story to tell.
that I've done so much for this country and stuff. And so what started out as, how can I honor these vets? And it was really just going to be for a Veterans Day week that I had kind of planned in my head. And that went so successful. And we were able, during the first run of the Faces in 2017, we interviewed about 150 vets, and we got the pictures kind of blown up like you see some of them here. And we had a gallery in the Dallas VA Medical Center, and we had a ceremony around it, and we invited some of the vets who we had captured. And, the media showed up, but more importantly, the veterans and their families showed up to this, and we kind of honored them, and we honored them for their service. And it was something that had never happened at a VA medical center, where we were taking those vets and honoring them for their service, kind of aside from the medical part of it. Different segments and components within the VA have celebrations for the cemetery or for benefits, but this was unique. And seeing the success of that, I'm like, how can we translate this into something that's not just once a year? And so, Faces of Service, which is the big parent project, became Faces of VA, which if you follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, you'll see on a weekly basis that we have a scaled down version of the portraits that feature veterans and employees and a sentence or two about their service. But what started out is, how can I capture some of these faces and voices of these 2,500 people? It kind of turned into this living legacy flagship project that it's been adopted by at least 12 other VAs across the nation in some form or fashion. And to me, it's helping us bring these stories to the front where they need to be, because every veteran has a story. And I think it's critical that we make those stories available and we tell and share those stories.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I loved this project. I got to help with this project a lot when we first did it, and I loved it. I loved every second of it. I love it because I think it's probably the truest interpretation of that a veteran can be anybody. It doesn't matter your race or your creed or your sex. It doesn't matter. None of that matters, right? Like at the end of the day, we're all just veterans, right? We all bleed red, white, and blue kind of thing, right? But I think that it's great because it gives this visceral depiction of who a veteran is, and no one can point a veteran out really in the crowd. Sometimes you can. Sometimes, like, in this guy's case, he's wearing a vest that has POW all over it, or he's a Vietnam veteran, or this guy behind me is wearing a bunch of Vietnam patches. So, like, that you can tell, but sometimes they just look like normal, everyday people, right? And you're never going to know. And so just walking through the hall, plus we got to hear so many stories. I mean, so many stories that were awesome. I mean, we got to hear one guy was... shot down in the Pacific on a ship, and he survived. Right? I mean, he was like one of like 100 people that survived that ship. And so like you're sitting there thinking like this guy walks through the hall every single day.
Right.
Right. And he goes to all these appointments, and I've seen this guy before. I've seen him multiple times in the hallway. I never knew. Yeah. Right. Never in my wildest dreams would I think this guy was the survivor of a ship, had like, couple thousand, and he was the survivor of the last 100 that survived off of that. Or this guy, got shot down in Vietnam when he was flying a plane, and like you just don't know. But once we sat down, I just started looking at everybody different. I was like, you have no idea what any of these people have done. Like, you just have no idea. You cannot look at someone and go, no, they probably haven't done anything, because you have no idea.
Right.
You have no idea. So I thought it was great, and I thought it was really good. And that's why, we also brought it to the Dallas Film Institute. So we brought it there when they had like a gallery. So I was able to bring it there and kind of showcase it too. And they loved it. Civilians eat it up. They love it. Which is good. Which is good. All right, so that kind of ties us into this. So what do you think, why do you think, as a veteran yourself, right, why do you feel like it's such a big, it's such a big deal to tell our stories as veterans, right? Not just because obviously we do have a story to tell and our voices should be heard, but it has to be more than that, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like it's more than just that. But what do you feel?
I think you can look at that scenario as about 50% of the people who could use VA in VA North Texas use VA. And I think it's a pretty fair comparison to say that, probably 50% of all the vets that are out there feel as if they don't have a story. And I use the word story, I think a lot of people tend to think, well, I don't have an exciting story, Jeff. I served in the Navy, and I went to work every day, and we sailed here and did that. But I mean, that is a story. And if you think about all the time and that you invested in it, all the friends that you made, all the places that you saw, all the experiences that make you the person that you are today, not just as a vet, but for those who've served, that 1 or 2%. We can't get around the fact that being a vet, no matter if you serve 2 years, 4 years, 20, 40 years, it stays with you.
It lingers.
It becomes part of who you are, good or bad, again, to use that. If you've had bad experiences in the military, then you carry that with you, unfortunately. If you had good experiences, hopefully it molded you into a person that has helped you achieve the goals and dreams that you wanted to do post-military career. And so I think every person needs to fight that urge to say that their story's not important, that their experiences aren't important, because they are. Whether you can see it or not, even as simply as getting your health care at VA, your story is important for your physician and your healthcare team to understand what you've seen, what you've done, where you've been. And especially when we're talking about Vietnam era veterans, Blue Water Navy, burn pit stuff. We're talking about your story helps us help you either in preventative care or diagnosing and treating you for what you may have or hopefully you will never have. And so, again, vets all the time tell me, Jeff, my story just isn't important. Well, and I always correct them. You're wrong. Your story is important. It's important to me. It's important to VA, and it's important to a lot more people than you think. So being able to provide a visual representation, but honestly, more or less just sit down and when we interview these vets, let them share their experiences with you, the good and bad experiences with you. And Lord knows, I've interviewed probably personally over 600 vets now. Since 2017, and I've heard some incredible stories that make me proud, and I've heard some stories that just thinking about them now, I can visualize myself sitting there hearing it, and I'm like, wow, you're a super strong person. So, and again, I think it's important that they were able to share these with somebody. And in some cases, they had never shared these stories before with anybody.
Yeah, because we were starting to do these lunch and learn events, right,
Yeah.
for all the employees, to where we're trying to engage with our internal employees so that they have a better or easier time engaging with the veterans, right? Obviously, we're very siloed in the VA. I don't think that anyone's a stranger to that, right? Different departments or different whatever. All right, we don't ever really speak to each other unless we have to, kind of thing, and that's what we mean by siloed. But doing lunch and learn, I talked about that. I talked about that a lot, to where I said, listen, sometimes when veterans come in, like, you might be the only human interaction that they're going to get all week. Like, all week. And I know that seems like really depressing, and I know, like, oh, poor veteran, but like a lot of veterans choose that, right? But like, if they're going to have a human interaction, let it be a good one, right? Like, let it be a good one. Let their voice be heard. Don't just zip to whatever you need to get done because, like, you're just trying to check the box so that you can cycle people through. That's what makes us as veterans feel like we're being herded through like cattle, right? When really that person on the other end that's hurting is not really meaning to hurt, right? It's just they're two human beings trying to accomplish two different things at the same time. I have, as a veteran, am trying to accomplish getting health care, right? Mm-hmm. And then you, as a provider, are trying to get as many people through as possible so we can help as many veterans as possible. Mm-hmm. Both of those are good things, but it's just that there's somewhere where we just don't meet in the middle. And I said that's why you take a time, right? And you do that whole active listening. And I think that's exactly what we were doing when we did the faces, right? Is that we provided an active listener who really, really cared, right? Who wanted to hear about their service, whether they filed paperwork or whether they were on the front lines running through the battlefields of wherever. Right. Okay. Like, it didn't matter. It didn't matter to us, right? Like, all that mattered is that they had a story to tell and we were willing to sit down and listen. And I think that changed lives. Like, it really did. I think it just changed so many lives.
And it wasn't as if I had a script with a list of questions. It was really just sitting across from them and just saying, hey, so you served in the Army. Hey, what unit were you in? And then it developed into this natural dialogue. And I think through the first 150 or so I learned that I could never just have a fixed set of questions, that you just have to be there to listen. And if someone comes to get their portrait taken and they have some of their unit stuff on and hats from their service in the Army or whatever, they're proud of their service. They want to be recognized for that. And, we thank them for their service, at the VA. I know most employees do on a daily basis, but, I think we've enabled them to be able to tell that story or to draw it out of them. And like you said, it's been a tremendous human nature look at good stories and stories that a lot of vets kind of hold in the back of their head and don't revisit for whatever reason. And sometimes you have to revisit these things if you want to grow as a person or move on. So, I think it has been very helpful for a lot of people. It's kind of like a informal therapy session, if you will, with someone who they don't know, who they can just express who they are or express a moment in their military time with us. And it means a lot to us to hear them, but it also helps us because I feel as if someone's going to trust me enough or trust my team enough to share their story, we can do it justice by helping that vet and letting that story get out so I can help other vets.
I was just about to say that. I think it does just as much for us as our team, because I remember, like, the first time we did it, we had Yolanda came back, I think, like the first day. She was one of other outreach people that used to work outreach. Now she's a public affairs specialist, so she writes stories and stuff. But when she came back from that event, I remember her saying some of the stories, it just humbles you, right? Because you're just like, you may have walked in that day thinking like, I'm having a really crappy day and I really don't want to be at work, Yeah. But then you listen to some of those stories and you're like, I'm so happy that I'm at work now, right? Like, because we're able to like sit there and listen, or they were so appreciative of just us sitting and taking the time to just listen. And even if it was like for 4 or 5 minutes, and like, it really makes you appreciate what you're doing and where you are and where you work. And I think that it was a really I don't know, it was like almost like a somber experience for us, right? In a certain way. I mean, it was reverent almost, right? To where we came back and we were just all kind of sitting in the office. I remember all of us kind of sitting there being like, well, that was something, right? Like, well, that was something today.
And I think a lot of the vets who have not been sharing a lot of their stories, it comes from generations. I know my grandfathers who served in the Second World War. Before they passed, I never heard really anything from them. It was just they went and served, and both of them served for the duration of the war. So you're talking 4.5 or 5 or more years in active combat theaters, and they got home and they started a family, and they never spoke of stuff to their family. There was no stories passed on until later on in life, and where certain things would start to come out. My dad and his brothers in Vietnam, same thing. There was a hesitation to share stories from that generation as well. I think with the Iraq and Afghanistan and modern day conflicts, I think people are more apt to share their story, but a lot of the faces that we interviewed were from these earlier generations where I remember specifically a couple examples where people literally were telling me that I've never told this story before to anyone, even to my own family. And that it was humbling to me, but it made me feel as if what we've done today, even though tiny, made a difference, hopefully for that person. And so that, and their story would be honored and recognized.
Yeah. So. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we're running out of time. No stranger there because I talk a lot. And I just wanted to add real quick before we move on to our last question. I mean, you talked about how telling your story, you can't hold it in forever. Yeah, I mean, that's like rule number 1 in mental health, right? Yeah. Is don't hold it all in because eventually it's just going to explode. I always tell people, I've told people before on this show, if they watch, I've told people before on this show, having something like a story or something in your head or mental health, right? It's a lot like having like an open wound. Like let's say you get like an open gash in your arm, right? Like you cannot leave it bandaged forever. Like if you leave it bandaged forever, it will just get worse, right? Because it doesn't have time to dry. It doesn't have time to scab. It doesn't have time to actually do it's healing, right? And so I feel like telling our stories is kind of the same analogy for that, right? Is like telling our story every time we tell our story, right? Is like airing out that wound. And then if you want to bandage it back up and you want to head home after that, like fine, but like you got to air it out every once in a while, right? So that you can start to let it actually progressively heal. So yeah, that's my 2 cents, at least from the mental health perspective, because I'm so big on that. All right, so let's wrap it up with this. If you could say or tell veterans, okay, anywhere, all over the place, which I hope listen, but if you could tell them anything at all, okay, what would you tell them?
Your service matters. Your service mattered. You have a story. We all have a story. From one fellow disabled vet to another, you owe it to your fellow vets to share those stories. Whether through the Faces of Service program here at VA North Texas, or however you want to express it, your blog, your social media, YouTube, we have an important story to tell. If we don't share those stories, who's going to share them? Well, I can tell you that the media might want to share your story, whether it's good or bad, but again, we control our destiny. We have a voice. We need to share our stories. It's important for the current generation. It's important for those who aren't with us anymore. And it's important for our kids and for the future.
Well said. Yeah, and I can't stress enough how much your story may impact another veteran and impact them in a very positive way. And honestly, I got in when I got into this whole VA field. I started as a peer support specialist, and it was all about telling my story, right? Telling, hey, yeah, I've been inpatient therapy. Yeah, of course, I spent 5 weeks there, and and I did all these things, and I'm not ashamed about it. And so, just being able to like tell my story and have like very little shame about all the shameful things that I tell in my story, or at least things that you should be shameful of, right? But them kind of seeing that to where they're like, that's different, right? Like this guy just talked about being impatient and like he just didn't care. And so, yeah, I think just telling your story, you don't realize like how much that can really impact and change lives, right? Or drive other veterans to seeking healthcare with us or anywhere, really, right? Like it doesn't matter where they go. We just want veterans to get healthcare, just great healthcare, period, right? We just want them to get the right care at the right time that's right for them. Right? Period. Whether they come here or not. That's what I always tell people. Whether you come here or not, I don't really care. Okay. I need you to go and get help wherever you feel comfortable to getting help.
Exactly.
All right. Well said. Well, listen, that's all we got. So yeah, thank you so much for being on. I really do appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. And faces of service. I mean, if you're in our catchment area, this summer, we're going to have at least 1 or 2 events. Come share your story with us.
I love how he plugs stuff. Did you see that? How he plugs it? He plugged our Facebook too. So if you're not subscribed to our Facebook page, you should be. He plugged it. It was eloquent, but it was in there. I'm really bad at plugging things. But yeah, absolutely. If you're in this local catchment area in the DFW, yeah, pay attention. Get on our Facebook. I'm sure that we'll post about it on Facebook, right?
We will, yes.
Okay.
On Facebook, on Twitter, Instagram, and hopefully you guys, if you're in our catchment area, you're getting emails from us on a fairly regular basis. I know we try to keep our audience as informed as possible because an informed vet is a healthier vet. So
that's not how I say it. I say an informed vet is a dangerous vet.
That's also true.
Like in a good way, dangerous, right?
That's true as well. So I mean, again, there are many ways that we're trying to connect with patients, with employees, with families, and all these organizations. So be involved, be that change that you want to see and you want to be, and share your voice.
We also have a social media guy, Keenan Cobb. He's over here. He's off in the distance. But yeah, so now we have a social media guy, which is great because now our posts aren't boring anymore. So that's a good thing. So at least you don't have to like subscribe to some government post and you're like, oh, it's the same boring crap all the time, right? Because that's yeah. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, we tried to localize all the content because it makes sense. I don't want to put anything out as a communicator that I would not want to engage with or read myself.
Love it. Absolutely love it. All right. Well, you heard it first. All right. Well, listen, thank you so much, Jeff. I really do appreciate it. And that's it. That's all we got for you today. So if you are not subscribed to our channel, please do. It's Charlie Mike VA at YouTube, but you know that because you're probably watching us right now. But if you're not, then go to YouTube and watch us. Also, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the whole gamut, okay? And that's at #VA North Texas. And yeah, please comment down below if you like it or if you hate it, because your story matters. Okay. All right. But that's it. That's all we got. And remember, no matter how bad things seem to be, just Charlie Mike.
Don't tread on me. At least I got something left.